All right, well, we are about 3 minutes after, so why don't we get going? We are recording the call. We're excited today to have everybody join us for the Canadian Community Discussion. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ashley Nagy, Vice President of Member Services, and we have several of our Canadian community members on the call with us, as well as our featured guest. So excited to kick things off. First up, we have a few housekeeping items that I'm going to run through before I turn it over to Josh. So if you have not heard, our next event for RSPA coming up is our Inspire Conference. That's going to be held January 26th through the 29th in Curacao. This is our annual thought leadership conference. We usually have about 250 attendees. You get your executive level leaders across vendors, ISVs, and resellers or VARs. It's a great opportunity where we have half-day roll-up-your-sleeve education workshops where we talk about new trends, new techniques, best practices, challenges, and we also have dedicated networking time so that you can have real sit-down conversations with your industry peers. Always a fantastic event and time to be together. If you have questions about the event, feel free to reach out to myself or the member services team, and we're happy to share additional details.
Speaking Ashley, if I can just add, it's 33 degrees Celsius in Curacao right now. So.
Oh,
yes,
God.
It will be warm there. Speaking of our member services team, just want to remind everyone about the RSPA White Glove service. Also on the call is Peggy Fry, one of our member services managers. Nicole Green is out for a little bit. She just had her first baby. But our member services managers are here to help each and every one of our members with their business. Whether you're a vendor, an ISV, or a VAR, we're here to help you with warm introductions. We do those one-on-one, things like education advisory services, legal assistance, anything and everything that helps support your business, because we know that every business is unique in their needs. And that is our goal, to help you with your strategy and also those connections. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, or you can always reach us at membership@gorspa.org. And now I would like to thank our sponsors of the Canadian community, sessions like the one today that we're having, as well as at our events like Retail Now would not be possible without the continued support of our Canadian community sponsors, Blue Star, Citizen, Heartland, Partner Tech, Shift4, Star Micronics, Toshiba, and Verifone. A big thank you to those sponsors. If you haven't connected with them, I'd encourage you to do so. If you would like a warm introduction to any of these companies, feel free to reach out to myself or Peggy, and we're happy to help make that happen. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Canadian Community Chair, Josh Wintoniak of AutoStar. Josh, if you will help get things kicked off for today's session.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. Very excited about the session today, and also looking forward to Curacao. The weather's nice here now, but I know in January it's going to be great to be down there in that 30-degree weather, putting on some sunscreen. Really excited to have Carl Boutet back to speak with us today. He's founder and chief strategist of Studio RX. He's also an RSPA board member. He's got 25 years of experience in advising senior leaders and brands on how to build better business strategies. Today he's going to be sharing with us, rapidly emerging trends and technologies. We're going to talk about how you as resellers can anticipate and differentiate and leverage some of these opportunities. We'll have a short presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussions. This is a roundtable, so we'd love to get some feedback throughout. So at that, I will turn it over to Carl. Carl, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Josh, Ashley, and Jim, for having me. And as I guess my first presentation as a proud RSPA board member, so very exciting, and in the Canadian community, so that's even better. So let me, actually, I think I need you to stop sharing your screen, Josh, or whoever's sharing it, so I can put mine up, maybe. There we go. Thank you. So let me get this up. I can get a thumbs up here that you are seeing my screen. Everything is good. Beautiful. Thank you, Josh. So as Josh had in that previous slide, just at the bottom, no awkward silences. This is meant to be interactive. Although with teams, sometimes I have challenges seeing everybody's faces and hands up. I do a lot of online teaching as well. I've developed some pretty good skills, but not perfect yet where I don't necessarily see all of you. So Josh, maybe if anything comes through and that needs, that I can address, please just call, or anybody come off mute, and I'll be happy to speak to any one of these points. So for the next, I guess, 30 to 40 minutes, I kind of want to focus on these two terms, anticipate and differentiate, and bring you through some of the key trends that I've noticed. A little bit more background on me. I said 25 years. It's actually coming up on 30 pretty soon. I'm going to have to update that bio. But I started off as a retailer, and unbeknownst to me, it was in the services business as well, because I was selling technology within Costco across Canada. Maybe some of you heard a bit my story when I presented in Toronto a couple of years ago, or one of the other events. But I helped develop, or didn't really pay much attention to it at the time, but one of the first mobile POS systems. But I didn't do it because I was a POS vendor. I did it because I was a retailer with 65 locations across Canada, from Halifax to Nanaimo, mostly within Costco's, selling the first generation of wireless. So it all comes full circle for me. But before we get to that, so that's not what you're here for. You're here to better understand where anticipation and differentiation can help you and your clients. And I put those two together because I think more and more in today's business world, if we're not helping our customers, we're not helping ourselves. So very important to sort of be familiar with these trends and understand what it is that our clients are going through so that we can best support them. And one of the things our clients are going through is, these rapidly emerging technologies and their benefit, if well used, to their business outcomes, be it for the way they serve the customers or the way they operate internally. So what are the two terms we're going to focus on? As I already have anticipate. So what do we mean by anticipate? We're going to talk a bit about data. It's going to be kind of a shorter part of the presentation because it's kind of technical. And if you're interested in this stuff and learning more about how we're going to leverage data, then there'll be a lot of resources at your disposal if you want to reach out to me. And the second one we're going to spend a little more time on, it's near and dear to my heart, is differentiation. How do we as businesses differentiate and help our retail customers differentiate as well? And why do we do that? Well, we need them to matter more and more. What they decide to do, how they decide to present themselves in the market, the technologies they decide to adopt, you hopefully supply and support may help them do that more and more. So let's look at these two. But before we get to that and we talk about trends, actually, one of my favorite quotes when we talk about looking at these trends and the emerging technologies and how we feel about the future is to use this famous William Gibson quote. So some of you might be familiar with his work. He's a philosopher and author and Canadian, if I'm not mistaken, or at least spent part of his career in Canada. And he had this famous quote that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I think the reason why I like to bring this quote up whenever when I do these presentations is that, I'm not a futurist. I'm not somebody that necessarily spends all my time trying to predict what's going to happen. But what I am pretty good at is kind of seeing around the world what's happening and picking up on some trends there that I think can impact the way that we're going to eventually run our businesses here, and some already are. So the idea that these trends, this anticipation and differentiation that we're talking about are not just pulled out of thin air. These are often use cases that we're already seeing applied in different places. Sometimes it's geographically, and other times it's by industry. Maybe other industries have pushed ahead, and we can be inspired by some of the adoption and adaptation that they've gone through as well. Just quickly, kind of part of some of that adaptation for me, and I've been using this one for a while now. So for those of you that's not the first time, trust me, you're not going to get all old school stuff here. There'll be some new stuff in here, but just so to help those who it is their first time. January 2020 for me was a crucial moment. It was sort of the beginning, especially of my anticipation and differentiation in a lot of ways. I was coming back from chairing the first omni-channel retail conference for Southeast Asia. I'd been in Bangkok that week, and on my way back, I had the privilege of spending time with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. The date was kind of important on this one, not necessarily the picture, but other than the fact that it places me in Shanghai on that date. But for those of you that's sort of wondering, this date seems kind of familiar. Well, it was literally 2 days before Wuhan really broke out. And I was luckily the day after this picture was taken on a plane back to Montreal, where I'm based. So just to say that was, for me, in a lot of ways, put me at the forefront of a lot of this anticipation and trying to understand how businesses were managing through the pandemic. And it led to writing my first book called The Great Acceleration, where I really went into detail. And some of you, again, may have seen this presentation. So I'm not going to spend much on the acceleration. I'm just going to put some of it back into context. But what I will do for you today is talk more and more about the race to relevance and the fact that differentiation and anticipation, yes, resilience is still important. I think if you're still in business in 2024, after going through what we've had in the last 5 years, especially, I think you have got your resilience badge already well accomplished. So focusing on relevance and how anticipation and differentiation plays into that relevance. Let me give you some new stuff. It starts here. So this last time I was showing you a picture of me in Shanghai in January 2020. This is the first time I'm actually sharing this new part, and something that I'm going to be speaking a lot more about. Not the fact that I was necessarily in Vietnam, not a very clear picture, but I teach twice a year in Southeast Asia now since that 2020 event. And what happened to me in this course actually plays a lot into what we're talking about. So in December of 2022, I was in Hanoi teaching the first week of December. And so it wasn't a pandemic that was going to break out this time, but something pretty big that sort of exploded onto the scene while I was teaching this class. So one morning I wake up to teach. Before teaching, I would go through the news, and there's an article saying, could ChatGPT be the Google killer? And it was from Bloomberg. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I was there teaching digital marketing and analytics and wondering, well, what do they mean? Could this kill Google? So like a lot of people probably around that time, I decided to hop on and try this for myself for this first time, this new ChatGPT. I've been looking at other AI models for a while. I actually even studied data science at MIT in 2015 in one of their first open enrollment classes, because I was just curious about how data science was moving quickly, big data, and so on before that we started all calling it AI. And started playing around with it. Thought it was interesting. Thought I should share it with my class that day. So when we showed up in class that morning, I shared with them the tool, which was actually hard to use in Vietnam. At that point, it was actually behind a firewall, but that wouldn't stop smart business school students, especially in an engineering school, to figure out how to use it. And not thinking much more about the tool than that. I thought it could be inspiring for them, just looking forward and how they could work. Yep. Somebody.
501. Okay.
Sorry, we got somebody on the background here. I think it's Steve. If you could go on mute, please. Steve Greenwood. Thank you. So lo and behold, one of the students during our first break, after our first break, comes back to me and says, Professor, this tool, this ChatGPT, is very interesting. I said, yeah, I think it will have a lot of business implications. It just literally came out that week to the public. So what could we do with it? And he said, well, I can tell you that this was the chief information officer for one of the largest healthcare providers in Vietnam. And he was like, I was in the process this morning. I had to send my boss an updated prospectus for a press release we're doing. And I asked just for fun ChatGPT to see what it would come up with, what kind of prospectus it could write for me based on the information from our website. And it actually wrote something I would dare say as good as I could, maybe even better. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And so how are you going to translate that? He said, no, it wrote it in Vietnamese behind a firewall that didn't have Vietnamese. And this is December 2022. And here we are in October, nearly November 2024, the model has exponentially by millions and billions of parameters expanded. So just thinking about that, and this is the first time I actually share this with any group, and I'll be sharing more about that, but that basically spurred the insight for my second book called Blind Spot, and what I'm more and more thinking about in the context of anticipation and differentiation is how do we navigate these technologies that even for people like me that spend most of my waking hours thinking about this stuff and how it impacts commerce, how do we not get caught off guard by it? How do we can better anticipate and differentiate these technologies in commercial applications in ways that are going to help our businesses? So stay tuned for that. The book is not out yet. It's actually just going through its final rewrite and should be out by Christmas. That's what we're aiming for. But you are the first to see this cover outside of the team that has helped me write this up. So thinking about groundbreaking technologies that might have caught us off guard. I don't know if some of you, or if I think, and we can go into the chat here if I see if I can see the chat, but which technology, and if you've seen parts of this presentation before, I might have used this example last year already, but there was a technology that was sort of groundbreaking for us that celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. And some people say, well, is it the internet? Some people would say, would have different sort of guesses around technologies, and eventually, I think pretty much many of you would come up with the arrival of mobile. And thinking about, okay, 50 years ago, maybe some of you had this phone. I had this phone, and it played a big part for me in how I even got into wireless eventually. But all to say, think about 50 years and think about how much has changed and how we could have foreseen 50 years ago what this device would represent to us today and all the capabilities it could accomplish. It would be very hard for us to sort of think forward 50 years from that first commercial phone call, which it really was 30 years ago that we started getting into more the commoditization of mobile, and to think about, wow, in 50 years, it could come to this, which is, for those of you who are less familiar with the Apple line of products, this is the Apple Vision Pro. So it's basically you taking sort of all the wireless and just expanding it to a much more immersive experience that we can that's going to influence a lot of commerce. Now you're saying, well, Carl, this thing's a flop. It hasn't worked. Really, those of you who maybe even tried it on, it's heavy. If this took 50 years to get to this, how long is it going to take to something that we can actually feel like we can wear and not get laughed at? That's going to have some sort of decent battery life, that doesn't have to have this big cable coming out of the back of it. That's, again, not $5,000, and it's only going to have a few apps to use, which, by the way, are all arguments that we pretty much said about the iPhone 1. Well, you can say, well, if that took, from 50 to 50 years to get from the brick phone to the Vision Pro, you'd be like, well, I'm sure we're at least another, 5-10 years out before having something that actually makes more sense. A couple of weeks ago, lo and behold, Meta came out with Onyx, which pretty much replicates 80 to 90% of what the Vision Pro delivers, but in a much better form factor, which you might not look as weird wearing around the office or anywhere else you could wear it, or even in the store, as we've seen some examples. Now, this is not commercially available yet, but when we're going to talk about differentiation in immersive commerce, remember this example, because I think this is going to be sort of a early gatekeep into those more immersive experiences that we all have to sort of find ways of supporting and helping retailers eventually get into this place, which is not just in the home, but wherever they go, including in the store. If you're freaked out about the speed of change, you're not the only one, because if you look at how long it took to get 1 million users, and this is already 2-year-old data, we went from Netflix taking 3.5 years to get to DVD delivery of 1 million people, to Twitter doing it in 2 years once mobile started really taking off, with Facebook doing it in 10 months, and then Spotify in 5, Instagram in 2.5, and our infamous ChatGPT example in 5 days. So if we think about the speed of change, and in your businesses, how do you support your clients in trying to figure out where they go, how they go, why they go with your solutions, with your with your technologies that you're implementing, supporting, integrating, it's really important that you create sort of this level of trust, allowing them to understand that you can help them navigate this, help them understand why one technology might be worth investing in more than another. And that's what we're going to really be focusing on in the next 20 minutes or so, is helping you sort of think about the bigger picture and where it is that your particular solution is going to help them anticipate and differentiate. All right, so that was all to lead up to the first two terms. So anticipation, like I said, is going to be pretty straightforward in terms of today anyway. So if there's really one thing you want to understand around anticipation, is this graph. It's actually Gardner that created this data use graph, and it's data science 101. But what you're trying to do here is help your clients and your own business sort of move up this arrow, helping them better collect and then and describe and then diagnose, predict, and prescribe their data. We're basically going from using the data that your solutions more and more are providing, because I suspect most of you have, if you're in digital technology or you're doing some sort of integration that involves digital, the ones and zeros more and more, or those bits and bytes more and more, are expected to deliver data that businesses can analyze to eventually use those to diagnose, predict, and prescribe. And the reason why we're going from hindsight to foresight, like my earlier ChatGPT example, is the idea that we're able to use and help our customers collect that data in a way that eventually is going to help them not just predict outcomes, but adjust to those predictions so that their businesses are optimized, not just expecting it to rain, but to have the umbrella at the ready so that when it does rain, they're not stuck getting wet. So the idea here is really, this is a very obviously super simplified version of data science, and this is AI in a lot of ways. What we're seeing, this explosion, is we're getting to a place now where we can prescribe. So when I'm asking ChatGPT or any one of these tools to give me an answer around any topic, it is really not just predicting what words go together, but it's prescribing and giving us an entire answer. So you're going to see we've come from this era of going from digital to smart, and now we're going to generative devices. More and more, they're going to get us to help our clients and our businesses get closer to this prescription level of being able to utilize data. If this sounds very heady and it sounds complicated, don't worry. It's not meant to be, again, it's not meant to scare. It's just meant to make you a little more comfortable in terms of understanding where we're going with the use of data more and more. If you look at the companies that are outperforming the market, 90% of them have really mastered this idea of getting to prescriptive and optimization and foresight, and going from what happened to why it happened to what will happen to how can I make it happen, or how can I make sure I'm prepared for what's about to happen. That's really more and more where the businesses are heading. The downside of this, apart from the complexity of integrating it, is it's not necessarily going to help you differentiate. And this is where we're going to spend a little more time in the next 15 minutes or so talking about what it is to differentiate and what are the trends that we can help our customers and our businesses leverage to differentiate. And that's really the key. So this is where you and your customers can stand out and make a difference and matter, as I mentioned earlier, to your clients. This is a chart that I had in the last book that I'm going to be sort of updating that I'm updating in the new one. So if ever you're looking for language around differentiation and speaking in terms that will resonate with a retailer or any business for that matter that sort of is looking to differentiate in the market, I propose these 4 attributes to sort of crystallize the language in the conversations and making them a little more strategic in the way that you can potentially help your clients differentiate. So this actually comes from work that Barbara Kahn did back in 2017 for her Shopping Revolution book. I'm not sure if you've heard Barbara speak and whatever the conferences. She's a professor from Wharton Business School at University of Pennsylvania, and she basically did an analysis and looked at the retailers and brands that were having more success in the market and found these attributes that I have renamed to a certain extent and still evolving in terms of their definition. But basically, these 4 attributes are: can your solution, or can your company, or is your company differentiating on price? That one's pretty straightforward. I think people right away sort of understand when we talk about, everyday low pricing, anything that can help them optimize their supply chain. I warn retail clients that are looking to differentiate on this attribute that if they're not fully vertically integrated, if basically they don't own their own ships coming out of the ports or wherever they're sourcing their product, it's going to be harder and harder to differentiate on price. Just take, for example, companies like even like H&M right now are having to go up market because they can't even compete with Shein. So think about that. If you're helping your customers, if they're doing something saying, I want this technology because I want to be the price leader in my market, you might want to help them rethink that a bit and how they, and same goes for you as well. Unless it's a proprietary technology that you have that only you can sell, it's going to be hard for you to really truly differentiate on this one alone, or even in combination with another. But it's the one that our industry often comes at. And what's important about these attributes is that even though we're not necessarily differentiating on it, we can't be overly exposed by them. We cannot justify necessarily our price being twice as high as our competitor either. We can just be at market, but not differentiate there, and to find other attributes to differentiate on. The second one in retail has been sort of the hot one, where we, I think, as solution providers, play a big part, is ease, what Professor Khan called frictionless. So a term I'm sure you've heard a lot over the last couple of years, sort of supporting the customer, the retailers needs to go frictionless. What can we do? What kind of solutions can we put into their stores that are going to help the customer move more easily in and out of the store in a way that's meaningful to them? So, a lot of this trend in physical retail came from Amazon Go, but there's a lot of other ones. It can be just the amount of locations that a retailer has if they're deciding to open a lot of locations just to be closer to each one of their target markets. Or is it investments in digital that they're doing if you're supporting them on the website or the virtual side or their apps and all these things that basically in today's world, we know retail is 24/7. So what can we do to help them sort of bridge that gap and get them to a place where if they do decide they want to differentiate on convenience, then there's bigger conversations that have to happen, because we know that bar is getting higher and higher and the investments have been very high. The good news is we're democratizing the pricing of these investments more and more, especially with cloud and IoT and different solutions right now that are more and more accessible, that weren't the case 5-10 years ago, that now even small, medium businesses could start adapting. But will that be enough to help them differentiate? You will have to help your customers, think that one through as well too. And again, with your business investments as well, what are you doing to make your business convenient as possible? Are there digital assets that you're investing in? Is it the salespeople that you're putting, more and more at the forefront? Is it chatbots that you're investing so there's 24/7 sort of at least a basic level of customer service? So there's a lot of places where you can, think about ease and convenience and frictionless. So on the bottom here, these are sort of we're removing the barriers. We're thinking about, okay, what are sort of the blockers for somebody to do business with us or with our clients? Price and convenience tend to be two of those major blockers, where if you're too expensive and you're inconvenient, it's going to be tough, but you can make at least minimal investments in those places to be at least market parity. Where things get interesting, where we can create margin and justify just maybe having pricing and conveniences, maybe not extraordinary, but good enough, are at the top of this index. So the top right is what Professor Khan called experiential, what I like to call delightful. So what can we do? These are a lot of the animations we can help create in store. If you're doing digital screens with great content and customization and personalization and all these tools that we're seeing more and more solution providers able to offer, what can I help a retailer really differentiate on the experiential, on the delight side? This is basically saying there's a store closer to me that sells the same things you sell, but I'm okay making that extra effort, driving that extra 10 minutes, making that extra effort to go to you, because I really value the delight that you create, the experience that you've given me, and the knowledge, the expertise, maybe it's the uniqueness. So there's a lot of things there. And in each one of these quadrants, you probably have either brands popping into your head, or retailers, maybe competitors that you're thinking about that are maybe playing on these places. And you cannot differentiate on all four of these. Usually research has shown if you can get into two, you're already doing really well. And when I mean differentiate, I mean really differentiate. I don't just mean asking around around the office, hey, are we good at this or not? It's really going out into the market and value and getting validation for that. The top left one, values, which is actually purpose. It's not value in the price sense. It's the values in the sense of, is the purpose of the business really, does it resonate with them? This one's really tough, but it's super powerful. And this is where small businesses tend to do better because they're closer to their communities. And they're usually tied in with groups like the RSPA that sort of makes them feel part of something. So if you can leverage that, and if you can leverage and help your clients leverage that, this is usually not where technology necessarily plays a big role. This is more really about the core of the business and what it represents. So it could be environmental, it can be social, it can be economic as well, but anything, so if anything that sort of shows your business in a better light, it could be the way you treat your employees, it could be the way you treat your customers, but all the things are the purpose of your business that resonates with them. It can make a big difference, and those are places that are often very interesting for brands to go towards in businesses. But you got to be very, very careful, because if you decide to go through this attribute, you actually got to lean into it and not just pretend and make it greenwashing. Because if you get called out on it, then it's going to be twice as hard and make it twice as painful for you to try to bounce back on any one of those other attributes. So those are four very basic attributes. And by the way, this slide, this presentation, I'm not seeing anything in chat, so it might be just the way I'm looking. I'm looking at the screen right now, but I'll make sure that it's available. And if you're interested in learning more about this index, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever through RSPA, and I'll be happy to give you a chapter from the last book that actually speaks to this. All right, let's wrap up with the trends and sort of ties this anticipation and differentiation together. This nice little backdrop picture is not AI, is not generative AI. It's actually the showroom of a new automotive retail dealership that's a partnership between Geely and Baidu in Shanghai. Baidu is like the Google, if you want, of China, where you can see if this is what a car dealership looks like in the future. And I talked about the future already being here, just not evenly distributed. Then this can give you a bit of an idea and set a tone, a bit of some of the trends that we can expect. One of the trends, and that we've been obviously paying a lot of attention to, is this merger of digital and physical. Something that I've put a lot of attention towards this past decade, especially of this blurring that I call between what is physical retail, what is digital retail, and where does that difference become irrelevant. I showed you that picture of me in the backdrop of Shanghai in 2020, the book called The Great Acceleration, which basically just captured this small moment in time where you see the red circle that just hopefully appeared on your screen, this jump in digital adoption. This is e-commerce, but I try to sort of advocate from just e-commerce because I think it's more and more a term that's harder and harder to define, especially as we go, as this chart shows, to 2059, where I have troubles telling you what e-commerce will look like, and I'll put air quotes here, e-commerce in 2030. I sure as heck have no idea what 2059 e-commerce is going to look like. But just remembering that we had this jump, remember how freaked out we all were, and especially our clients were at this moment, and how they felt underprepared. Now, this is a nice little linear sort of drop into 2059, where this is from eMarketer, where they were saying by their estimation was commerce would be at parity of e-commerce and physical commerce by 2059. Again, what does that even mean? I'm not sure. But what I'm for sure is that we're not going to have this nice clean line. There's going to be other jumps along the way. And as much as the Great Acceleration is sort of behind us, I would still warn your business and your clients to sort of think that we're not going to get any other shocks to the system. They could be, once again, public health. They can be geopolitical. They sure as heck can be environmental or weather related, as our especially our friends in the South here have gone through more and more increasingly, and even us in Canada, in the West, and the other disruptions that we have. So how do we help our businesses better anticipate and differentiate on this curve that's going to be more of these jumps, and sort of use the experience that we gained over the last 5 years to make sure that we better prepare our businesses and our clients for whatever these other little jumps that we're going to see in this merger through digital and physical. One thing that I do agree with this graph is the idea that we are going to have more and more digital touch points along the customer journey that are going to influence the path to purchase. So whatever we can do as businesses to support those touch points, the customer is not going back. The customer is always sort of over time moving forward here and going to have more and more digital in their life. I don't think anybody really 5, 10, 20 years from now thinks that there's going to be less digital than we have today. The nice thing, though, it's interesting is to see how it all breaks down. So it's not it's not all created equal. So for just instance, this is 2024. These are again U.S. numbers, but our Canadian numbers sort of reflect these at our scale in a lot of ways. So you see we're at 16. They were at 16.2 e-commerce. But what does even that mean? Well, there's physical, there's e-commerce wholesale, there's e-commerce marketplace. So even when you start talking about e-commerce with what we know today, it's already highly fragmented. And then depending on categories, which you're going to see in a second, it gets even further fragmented because that famous 50-50 parity that we were talking about in 2059, this is US e-commerce. If we were in China, these numbers would be even closer. But if you look at the graph going from the year 2000 to 2025 and how it's estimated to grow, you can see that some categories that hit that 50, including video games back in 2012, books in 2020, household electronics hit that in 2020, sorry, books 2017, and we're expecting clothing to hit by 2028, and others are going to keep moving up, with grocery being the one that's the slowest behind, but is going to catch up the most, and the one that I'm most interested in, because I always define grocery sort of as the conduit of goods. If you can get groceries into the home, it's easy to stack on all the other product categories, which is why you've seen all the large players like Walmart, Costco, Target in the US, and others heavily lean into food food e-commerce, because they see this as the conduit or sort of the pipe of stuff into the house. So what can we do knowing that, and how can we leverage that to help, again, our clients and our own businesses? Okay, just wrapping up 4 rapid fire trends. So physical stores that deliver unified, continuous, and frictionless experience for shoppers. I think you've caught up on that. That's basically my graph. How do we see that unification? What can we do to support it and help them? Because at the same time, while this is happening, we're helping them as well on our anticipation curve and getting them closer and closer to better understanding their customers and unifying so the customer has this sort of seamless customer experience. Trend 2, frontline, fascinating space. I don't think we talk enough about, especially in the vendor community. What are we doing to enable the frontline? We spent as an industry, and I'm going to start putting my retailer hat back on, we spent a better part of 15 years pouring all the resources into empowering the customer, making the customer more and more in touch with our business, more accessible to our business, that frictionless convenience, ease attribute. We really poured a lot of resources into empowering the customer. While we were doing that, we were forgetting the most important asset, and this is for your own businesses as well too, is your front line. What are we doing? What are the investments that we're making to make sure that our front line is as well equipped, if not better, hard to do, but ideal, than the customers that are walking through the door into the stores or coming to visit online? What are we doing to enable that front line? Trend 3, shopper engagement. So this is where the immersive thing comes in. I mentioned earlier that the Apple Vision Pro. Great article this week, by the way, in Wall Street Journal interview with Tim Cook. A lot of people are sort of calling it a failure. Apple doesn't look at these things like failure. They know what they're doing, and they're investing because they see these immersive experiences and what they call immersive or spatial computing. They're going to be investing billions and billions. Meta, with the little glasses I just showed you after, already at $15 billion invested into Orion. These are investments that they're not going backwards on, even though the market doesn't necessarily like them. It requires that there's this sort of real paradigm shift happening in the way that we have this digital layer that's getting thicker and thicker around us in these devices. And I focus a lot on audio here, on video, but audio, olfactive and haptic, all these senses, you're going to see more and more technology play, and maybe there's opportunities for you to play in those as well too, in the way that you serve your customers. And there's the whole live stream, Web3, generative AI that we talk a lot about. So these are all things that we're going to see where we're going to be able to personalize that path to purchase in these immersive experiences that are going to require more and more technology that hopefully you'll be able to supply and support in some way. Last trend, changing relationships. I'm paying a lot of attention to retail media networks. I don't know how many of you on the call are and we're going to open up in a couple of minutes for Q&A. So if you have questions about retail media networks, this is what I'm telling my students right now. If they want to differentiate in the workplace, and I teach master's level in emerging technologies and digital marketing, 2 different classes here at McGill in the master's in retail program. I tell my students, if you want to hit the ground running in this world, there are certifications in retail media networks offered by Walmart, Amazon, all the big players, Kohl's in the US. I don't think in Canada we have any specific ones yet, but at least gets them familiar with this whole marketplace of retail media networks. For service providers, where this becomes interesting is there going to be a ton of hardware going into stores to facilitate the physical aspect, because so far retail media, which is currently at around a $70 to $80 billion business, which is going to overtake traditional TV advertising by next year, is owned principally by Amazon and 99 and Walmart coming a distant second. But it's 99% of it is online right now, and we're going to see a big blow up in how that sort of manifests in a place where there's a lot more shoppers than there are online, and that is in the stores. And even the small mom and pop shops are going to be able to sort of join these networks and try to get media dollars from the brands to help them sort of compete in the market the same way that Amazon and Walmart and others right now are taking these dollars as a competitive advantage. 3 fun examples. This one actually happening as we speak. It just opened this, talking about immersive commerce, SnapStreet. If any of you are interested, Snapchat is actually one of the always sort of the early adopters around immersive commerce. I remember if you look at my LinkedIn post from today, I talked about their vending machine. If those of you remember from their first glasses that they did, these funky vending machines that were popping up in the middle of nowhere all over the US. They're doing something in London right now where they're partnering with some great brands and doing some really immersive experiences only the way Snapchat can. This is Zara. These are RFID counters, the one taken from Champs-Élysées, that basically now are not just making frictionless checkout more convenient. It actually makes it visually pleasing as well, something that's been lacking in the category, where the Decathlons and the other Zaras of the world and H&Ms basically just had these buckets that detect RFID. How can you do that and make them more interesting, more immersive, more engaging, more delightful? And here's sort of probably a bad example of retail media, because this one's a little over the top. It gives you a bit of an idea of just how far this can go. And some of you might have worked with Cooler Media and these other firms that have started doing this. But there's going to be more and more of these sort of integrations happening. That's it for me. 145 on the nose I was aiming for. I look forward to seeing you at Inspire, and I'm really excited, and it's an honor for me to be part of the board of RSPA. So hopefully me talking through at high speed here and getting you through this presentation in short form, but hopefully January 26th to 29th, we'll have chances to meet in person, and happy to unpack which part of this presentation and anything else that touches emerging technologies and new business models and how our industry is always keeping us on our toes.
That's great, Carl. Thank you very much. Great insights there. It's awesome to see some of the updates that you've built since sort of the last time we heard from you as well. You have time for a few questions, some discussion?
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone wants to throw it into the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
I know it's a lot. It's probably felt a bit like a tsunami coming through, or kind of how I felt January when I 2020 when I got off the plane here in Montreal and realized that there was this wave that was about to crash over us.
Yep. I have lots to throw your way if anyone else is going to jump in. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself and take advantage of Carl.
Take advantage of me. That doesn't sound.
Go ahead,
in a nice way. In a nice way.
Yeah.
Hey, I finally got my mic on phone. How are we?
We're
I'm
good.
Dennis
We're
from
good, Dennis.
Vancouver.
Hey, Dennis.
So heard you talk a little bit about chatbots and then show all kinds of cool stuff. And we're sort of getting really deep into the chatbot and, more importantly, the voice agent space.
Yes.
And I mean, it's tough because we've rebuilt everything about 4 times in a row, and ChatGPT just brought out their real-time API that's going to become voice to voice. So, and I'm just going to, you seem to be the guy that would know what I'm talking about. And so this is very cool. So this takes no more text to speech, speech to text on each side with deepgram and such. This is now going to become fully voice, and you can literally say to this thing, answer in a pirate's accent, and it will. You can speak Spanish in the middle of a conversation, and it'll pick it up and answer it. Speak Chinese, Japanese. I speak Japanese, so I've tested it in Japanese. So where this technology is going is, you saw that overwhelming wall that you put up with all those ads? What if one of those was an avatar that the person could scan a QR code, put their earbuds in, and have a conversation? All of that is now possible. And then one step further, the Meta LLM can be actually burnt in a very, very small model. They can actually live inside the device and not even need internet connectivity to do this. So where this is all headed for everyone in retail is, you want to be exciting, put a bot up in your store that people can talk to, pretend that it's fun, and then they find out pretty soon that it's more educated than any of your staff. So it's a super good resource that's fun and handy, takes some pressure off of floor staff, and could become a unique way. So, I mean, I see it going into retail fast and furious. The problem is keeping up with it, from chatbot to AI chat, or sorry, from automated attendant technology of old, to chat bots, to AI chat bots, which change the world, to RAG bots, which stop hallucination and really, really dial in the capability of answering specifically, then to pretty good voices. I made a $21,800 decision on listening to a bot for 40 minutes and not figuring it out for 30 of it.
Wow.
So where this is all going, when you're talking about retail and all the cool stuff you're talking about, you want to create that value side. I mean, there is so much opportunity with chatbots and voice bots and hologram fans. I know it sounds crazy, but you could put 3 hologram fans in a store and have people interact with an avatar of the owner.
Yeah.
It's insane. So what do you want to do to get people into your store? So anyways, I just wanted to add to some of the things you touched on, that it's hyper speed fast, man.
Those are great examples. And to your point, how do you keep up with all that? How do you differentiate? Because the idea, what's nice about that is, I remember, I think in January of 2023, when, a couple of weeks after ChatGPT, Carrefour had one of those avatars set up, and they were using already, the text to voice, and it was too expensive even for them to really keep it up. So they just moved it into a regular text based chatbot that still runs really well, but the costs keep coming down. So the idea now that these technologies are going to be accessible for more and more people, and the models, what it takes is a bit of the skill, but even that's getting easier. A year ago, we were talking that the jobs of the future were prompt engineers, people that knew how to ask these AI's questions. Now we're even finding out that the latest models don't even require that much knowledge about how to ask the question. Even if you sort of awkwardly ask the question, it will figure out eventually what you're getting at, and will eventually, meaning very quickly. So it is, and even so, I think the important thing for all of us on the call, at the very least, even though you're not directly in this space, it's really user friendly, and there's great examples, Dennis, you just brought up. Like, you don't necessarily have to get to that level, but at least become aware of it. And how do you help them differentiate with that information? Yeah. Does it mean an avatar that's set up in the store the way you're promoting, or is it something that's completely different, where it's in the back end? Is it support? Is it training? Correct. We talked about enabling the front line. Is it something that we just use for our staff? There's so many options here, and it is moving. That's sort of the speed of change graph I was showing you. I mean, that's and how do we help our customers make those investments where they're like, well, Dennis, you just told us about this last week, and this week it already feels like it's because my competitor just came out with that. So how do we help them navigate that?
Yeah. So one of the coolest parts.
Carl, I'm wondering. Oh, sorry, Dennis. I was just wondering. Carl, you talk about retail media networks, and it's something we've been watching for a while, and it's been talked about for a while. It's hard to see it for independents taking advantage of it. But I wonder now, with the power of sort of generative video and audio, right, rather than having Kraft give us an ad that we're going to throw up on a screen, right? Are you seeing anyone use AI, demographics, biometrics maybe, to generate content for media networks sort of, you could be doing that on the fly. Literally, I could walk up
Good.
and, it could be giving me a personalized advertisement.
In Canada, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it manifest in physical retail that way because of our privacy laws. There was a couple of attempts, and there was pushback from privacy commissioners around using that kind of data, even if it's aggregated. Like, okay, there's more women 25 to 45 at this moment that's walking through the mall. Can we serve them more targeted ads? But we're going to get there because I think we can prove that data is truly non-personally identifiable. That's always what that world is concerned about. But they're on the digital side, 100%. We're already seeing a lot of sort of personalization, and not just in online. Even, I don't know if any of you caught during the Olympics this year, but some of the ads we were being served, you might have heard your city named as you're watching CBC, and they're saying, oh, insurance in Etobicoke is going to be cheaper, and you're like, whoa, like, I'm in Etobicoke. Is that just a fluke that it said Etobicoke? No, it wasn't a fluke. It knew that your digital set-top box was in Etobicoke and it's starting to serve you. I mean, we're just at the fringe here, but the personalized next level stuff, yes, and then we'll see. And we're still a ways from this mom and pops with the retail media networks. I spent almost 7 years with a buying group here in Canada called Mega Group. We had about 850 retailers across Canada in different sort of verticals, but anyways, there is some commonality, and you're going to see aggregation, not because they want to. By the way, nobody wants all of this to happen, because it's just, I remember my CEO from Mega saying when we were getting into the services business, which is what I came on to support, because I'd just rather be still just doing factoring and financing invoices. That's what our business is. The reality is we can't compete on that alone if we don't if we don't bring in extra revenue. And that's what retail media is all about, is one day somebody woke up, that person being Doug McMillan at Walmart, and saying, how the heck is Amazon got an extra $50 million coming into their caches, and that's giving them that much more firepower? Like, we got caught by cloud, by AWS, sort of pushing the money into their retails and that they could take to put into retail. Now they got this other thing called retail media, which is just advertising. Let's call it for what it is, giving it a fancy name. And that's now giving them that much more gas in the tank. So everybody's starting catching up, and those dollars are fleeing. As they've had for the past decades, or the traditional marketing dollars. So that's why you're going to see some charts where there's already some. I have Andrew Lipsman coming to speak on my class on Thursday. He's sort of the guru of this stuff. I'm looking forward to the more recent sort of updates, where you're going to see all the dollars, all those CPG dollars. You mentioned craft, but across the board, and even lifestyle. I'm hearing examples of airlines and car manufacturers that want to get in front of customers that are walking in to bespoke retailers. So there's going to be this is all new. But what's exciting for this group about that is there's going to be a ton of hardware that's going to come along with this over the next 5 to 10 years. And how do you get into that? How do you become well positioned to integrate that hardware and maybe be part of one of these RMN, is going to be critical.
So I have a quick question before I go here. One, I'm pissed off because now I have to go so I have a presentation.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll get you to buy me a drink. But the biggest thing is that there's always been a measurement when it comes to investment.
Yeah.
And with this, there's no mention of ROI. And I know it's very difficult to put an ROI on this. And I think Dennis and I talked about this, like for the 30 seconds at the retail now. But where does ROI fit into this whole thing?
It's a great question. So one of the nice things about that curve, that anticipation curve, is just that a parallel to that is something called attribution modeling, where we're getting better and better. The more bits and bytes that are coming into our path to purchase, the more ability we have to track. And even if it's aggregated, we can still get better and better data around what leads, which touch points, which actions lead to other actions. So there's a whole field around return on ad spend. So that's ROAS, especially for retail media networks, is really important, or even to the next level, incremental ROAS, with the incremental dollars that we can generate that we weren't already getting, because there was a lot of pushback. People advertisers were saying, well, those are the same dollars I would have got anyway, so why am I spending this extra money? So how can I show that? It's a really important point, Tim, because we need to see this. And now I'm using that in a digital marketing context, but all these chatbots, everything else that we're needing to do. Some of these investments are baseline. They're just to make sure that you can keep the lights on. Like it just keeps your business, current. What are the ones you're going to differentiate? Those are the ones you're going to want to really make sure you're measuring, and there's going to be more and more tools to do that. And I in my class I have actually from my group in Asia, I have the head of digital science for Meta. I mean, what Meta can do now, and actually the whole cookieless thing just drove them one level higher, where they're even gotten better at doing it. People thought it was going to penalize them when Apple and others said you can't do cookies, digital cookies, which are basically these digital crumbs that we leave along the way. They just found ways around that. They got them even better, where they can even do conversion analysis into the store, because they can get data from different sources. So it's moving very quickly, because they know if they want you to spend on there, and obviously they're going to give you the most compelling arguments, and we need to think and challenge those. They're still doesn't make them wrong. Like they have vested interest to make sure they can show that attribution and that those investments are ROIing. And your own businesses are having to do that day in, day out as well, right? Some pretty heady stuff there. I'm sorry. I know it's a good thing we're not doing this at night.
So Carl, we, in Canada, obviously we've got a long history in AI, and Jeffrey Hinton from University of Toronto obviously just won the Nobel Prize. But he's also famously quit Alphabet and has a lot of warnings about AI. When you're working in the Innovation Center in McGill, and you're talking to retailers, we're talking about some opportunities for resellers, but retailers, are they just thinking, well, AI is just going to make Amazon richer, or, what are they worried about? Do they see it as an opportunity for themselves, or do they see it as a threat to themselves, the big retailers that you're working with?
Even the small ones. I mean, that's the nice thing about technology more and more, is it's democratizing the access. Amazon, well, I won't use Amazon because they have their own models, but let's use a Canadian Tire has access to the same ChatGPT I have access to. If I pay the $20 a month, they don't have more power. They might be able to train their own sort of models internally and keep them a little more bespoke, but they fundamentally have access to the same technology. The cloud and the Azure and the different sort of tools that are available there, we have access to as well. Do they have more budget to do it? Sure, but that also makes them heavier. Doesn't make them as agile. So the retailer, I mean, one of my things I've loved about retail all my life is try to find this balance of art and science. And that, in one way, the anticipation is the science and the differentiation is the art. How do you sort of use technology like AI to elevate both is happening at all levels. The ones that don't care about this or don't think they're affected by it in any shape or form, unless they're I don't know, they're a flea market vendor, or maybe they can be okay with it. But anybody that's trying to build any kind of meaningful business that completely disregards this, I think, is like being back 100 years ago and saying, "Oh, this electricity thing, I don't really need it."
Yeah, well, just like my Netflix now, I can share it with 20 of my friends. I wonder how long this is going to be free for everyone, right? This amazing technology, this amazing power. Or maybe there'll be a tiered system.
There already
where
is.
We don't get the good stuff, right? But
well, it's already tiered, but it's a very powerful tier. Like it's
sure.
And you don't need to be cutting edge. You don't need to have a team of like we have at the school, postdoc data scientists to figure this out. That's frontier stuff that doesn't really have that many applications for us anyways yet. It's not stuff that really is going to impact your business today, but all the other stuff will, for sure. And we're seeing it. I work with a firm here called Genia, and we're doing some stuff on a couple of other boards too, and I'm introducing them. They're helping just with basic things, using LLMs to do, or co-pilots to do Excel spreadsheet reconciliations that was taking somebody in the accounting department, a full day to do. It's doing in like 12 minutes. I mean, that's time that's being able to be reused elsewhere, and say, okay, take that person and put them into analysis that actually matters, that they can actually do maybe more competitive analysis, go out and find things while you let the co-pilot do that boring reconciliation work that the person in accounting was taking a full day to do before.
And I believe that chat's going to dramatically raise their prices on the AI side, on the API side. Because if chat came to me and said that it's now $5,000 a month to keep using it on the API side instead of the 500 or 600 that I pay, it would be an instant yes, because I don't have a choice. But we can thank Meta and Llama for putting a limit switch on that, because now you can just go build your own nodes and completely eliminate any kind of API cost. So I think the market is gonna keep chat from doing what it probably was planning to do. So it's crazy, man. I just know I like having option B if they do slug us on the API. Boy, Meta will become my best friend then.
And there's a lot of other ones always popping up, and there's some great ones. We focus a lot on OpenAI, and they're the sort of the large one. But Llama is definitely from Meta is catching up. Claude from Anthropic is another great tool, probably one of the more powerful ones right now. And they're always evolving. And there's Perplexity, which is the one I tend to use the most for. The reflex is just not even using Google anymore. That article I shared with the class in Hanoi in 2022 is coming true. I mean, Google is under a lot of pressure too. So the giants are feeling this as well, and they have their models. Gemini is pretty good too. So everybody's competing, and I don't think we're going. I mean, has cloud gotten more expensive? I mean, there's Moore's law. Computers getting cheaper. So I think what's interesting right now, and as I'm wrapping up this book, I'm probably gonna have to include that, is we're actually already seeing sort of the top off of the whole large language model movement. It's sort of already hitting its peak that we can think. So now we're getting into symbiotic stuff where it's getting more and more sort of good at sort of understanding, which it doesn't do right now. Now it's just statistics. So once it starts getting more of that understanding, which I know will freak some people out, but it's not necessarily understanding like at a visceral level. It's just like it's getting more and more contextual.
That's great.
So we're going to see.
We're at time here, Carl. I mean, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. This is a very interesting discussion. Do you have a final word for the group before we turn it back over to Ashley, if there's any final words as well?
I'm just happy. I'm just looking forward to seeing you all at Inspire, but I can't buy you all drinks. Right now, I gotta tell you, as much as I would love to, there's gonna be, it would make a pretty big bar tab.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. This was really insightful.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Ashley, any
Have a
last
good
words?
one.
Thanks, Carl. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and super excited to see you in Curacao. And thank you, Josh. Thanks to everyone for joining. And we will share the recording once we're done. And looking forward to connecting with everybody again soon.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye for now. See you in Curacao.